Support for Consider This is provided by the University of Nebraska at Omaha College of Communication, Fine Arts, and Media.
Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
There. That's better. I'm Father Flanagan. I saw your brother Joe just a little while ago. We had a long talk about you, Whitey. Joe wants you to come with me to Boys Town.
You've got a swell chance taking me to that joint.
That's right, a swell chance. I've got $280 your brother gave me to take care of you.
I don't care if he gave you $1 million. What am I going to do in a broken-down nursery like Boys Town?
Oh, there are a lot of things you could do. We've got machine shops, carpenter shops, we've got printing presses, farming. You know, I think you might like farming. It's good for you. Keep you out in the open. Put hair on your chest.
If you think you're going to make a plow jockey out of me, you got another thing coming.
Now, look, Whitey, in a pinch, I can be tougher than you are, and I guess maybe this is the pinch. You're coming with me to Boys Town because that's the way your brother wants it. And that's the way I want it.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Boys Town. Joining us to talk more about it are historian Tom Lynch and Omaha sculptor Matthew Plachek. Welcome to the two of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kathy.
You bet. Tom, we're going to start with you. What is the mission of Boys Town?
The mission of Boys Town is to save children and heal families, and we do that across America, helping 2 million children and families every year.
Wow. Tell us about the founder, Father Edward Flanagan.
Father Flanagan was born in Ireland, came to America in 1904, always had a desire to help people, and in 1917 he founded the community of Boys Town, which went on to impact the lives of children all around the world.
You know, one of the things, and we can read a lot about him, of course, but what, as the historian, have you learned about Father Flanagan that maybe we don't know that would be important for us to know about the man?
Father Flanagan was a great champion of civil rights. Throughout his life, he fought for the rights of children and also adults. Regardless of their race or religion, he felt it was very important everyone be treated equally and have the same opportunities.
Okay, so let's go back, and you referenced it, 1917, hard to believe, when he actually opened something that's referenced as an orphanage, right? So take us back almost 100 years, Tom, and paint a picture of what things would have been like then as he was trying to open those doors.
When he opened Boys Town in 1917 here in Omaha, there really was not a juvenile court system for children. Children had several options. They'd either go to a reformatory or an orphanage or live on the streets. And he wanted to have another option where kids can come and have love and guidance and a spiritual life. And that's why he created the Village of Boys Town. And he said all children would be welcome because at that time too, American society was very segregated due to a person's race or religion, where he welcomed children of all races and religions to come and live together as one family unit.
Wow, and not surprisingly, they came, right? And that house quickly filled up, and there was then talk of a new location. So what I'd like to do is have you talk with us a little bit about that move, and then what we want to do is we want to put up a series of photographs for our viewers to walk all of us through the last 100 years. So let's go back in time and just tell us a little bit about the move itself.
In 1921, Father Flanagan needed to purchase a permanent home in the city of Omaha. Everywhere he went to purchase land, everyone objected to the fact he had children of different races and religions living together. So he said, well, I'll leave the city, go to the country, and have a home. And that's what he did. In 1921, he purchased Overlook Farm, which is located at 144th and Dodge Street. And on the day they moved, he only could afford a truck to move the little kids. So the little boys got to ride in the truck, and the older boys had to walk the 20 miles from 13th Street out to the Village of Boys Town. So there was a long line of about 100 boys walking out to their new home. And he loved the property. It was a beautiful farm, and it was a clean environment, and that's what we wanted for the children. And if people visit the Village of Boys Town today, they can still see the beautiful, clean environment that he wanted for the children that we maintain.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put up the photographs, and I want the two of you can comment if you'd like. We're going to start far back But Tom, walk us through these.
This is the village of Boys Town in about 1940. You can see our Catholic chapel and the dormitories Father Flanagan built for the boys. And at this time, our population was around 200 boys that were in residence in the village of Boys Town. And this is when the movie Boys Town was filmed on location back at that time in the late 1930s, early 1940s. This is a close-up of our original building that was featured in the movie Boys Town. It's called the Omaha Building. And if you notice in the garden there, towards the right, there's a little white figure. That's the first statue of Boys Town that Father Flanagan commissioned, called the Homeless Boy. It's a little boy with outstretched arm. And that was a symbol of Boys Town Father Flanagan adopted in the 1920s and eventually used up to the 1940s. And behind it is Father Flanagan's office in the distance. And part of that building still stands today. It's part of our Wagner School in the village of Boys Town. Back in the 1940s, Abbott and Costello, the comedians, came to the village, and they saw our baseball team had really kind of ratty uniforms because they're all hand-down uniforms. So they went and they purchased all new sports equipment for our boys. So our baseball team had new equipment and uniforms when they go out and would play games throughout the city of Omaha, and then also they would travel across the country. And then the background is one of the dormitories that Father Flanagan commissioned to be built in the 1930s. Just before Father Flanagan passed away in 1948, he began a building project, and this is one of the biggest building projects in the Midwest. Leo Daly Sr. designed all of the structures, and Peter Kiewit and Sons built the buildings, and it put both those corporations really on the map. And when the project was completed, Boys Town population grew to over 900 boys and residents. And if people come and visit the village of Boys Town today, they can drive by and see these buildings that Father Flanagan personally designed for the children. And this is an image taken of our community back in about 1960. That's our original pylon that Father had Flanagan commissioned. He always wanted a large sign for children to know they had made it to the village of Boys Town, because many children walked to the home through the 1930s and even up to the 60s. And today at the village we still have children who walk in. We call them pilgrims. They just show up and walk into our village and ask if they could live with us. And this is our village of Boys Town today. This image was taken in the early 2000s, and it shows the growth of our community. We have our new hospital in the village that serves children through our pediatric clinics, and we have a psychiatric program for children that has been added, and our village is very active and vital. We have over 400 boys and girls living with us, and every year we welcome around 200,000 visitors to our village as tourists and people coming to learn about our Boys Town programs.
At the beginning of the program, we showed a clip from the movie, and you referenced it too in your description here. Just curious, you are the historian after all. Thoughts about that movie and feedback that I'm sure you continue to receive today about that?
The movie was very popular, and Father Flanagan helped to write the script. Every day when the filming took place in the village, he was editing the script, and he wanted an accurate portrayal of the village of Boys Town as it was at that time. And he wanted to emphasize how it was open for children of all races and that children could come and have a good education. It was a film that also was part of his campaign to stop the concept of eugenics in America, where children, when they were born, were placed due to the race or religion within a category, saying this child would never advance due to the race or religion. He was against that. So the movie Boys Town showed all children could come, live there, have a good life, and achieve whatever goals they had.
Okay, you know, not an easy road for certain for someone like Father Flanagan, right? And when you sit here and you talk with us about it, it's like it's hard to really grasp what that man was going through. What types of support systems did Father Flanagan have? I mean, we talk about him like he was like this one-man band, but I'm sure that there was support. Talk to us a little bit about how it was that he was able to continue to fulfill that mission despite all the opposition that he met.
He had a good group of supporters, and these were individuals from the city of Omaha and eventually a network of fellow like-minded professionals across America who realized the concept in America of child care needed to change. So they came together and worked with Father Flanagan. In Omaha, he had Mr. Henry Motsky, who was a prominent Jewish attorney in the city of Omaha, our first donor. He worked with Father Flanagan, and then he had men and women of all different backgrounds, races and religions in the city that came together to help him. And across the country, he had other like-minded individuals, again, who wanted to work with him, because he had great opposition to his concepts. He had the Ku Klux Klan threatening to burn down Boys Town several times, and just individuals who said the concept would never succeed. So the work that he did was proving that it could be successful, and eventually President Franklin Roosevelt said America needed 49 more Father Flanagans, one for every state and territory. His ideas were adopted as a norm in America.
What would you say, Tom, was his biggest obstacle? You've mentioned so many here, but what, in your opinion, would have been the time where he could have said, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I feel defeated. What would that be, in your opinion?
It would have been the opposition he had from the press and even the juvenile court system, who were insistent that children had to be treated a certain way if they had broken the law. Within his lifetime, he brought 100 boys who committed murder to live in the village of Boys Town. Because he'd go across America, children would be convicted to be executed as young as 10 or 12. And he'd go and fight against that and try to bring them to live in the village of Boys Town. And it took him a long time to convince the press and the power structure in America that there was a new way to treat children. But through his example of the village of Boys Town and his authority of going out and speaking with people, he was able to change that idea in America.
Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit here. 1943, kind of a milestone. There were lots of milestones, but 1943, tell us why that's so special, and we'll put up a photograph while you're doing that.
Well, in 1943, Father Flanagan had a statue created, the homeless boy, as I mentioned. It was a little boy with outstretched arms. That statue was on our grounds. It was made out of plaster Paris. And he told the workmen, we need to bring that inside, because it was going to pieces. So in 1943, the workmen picked it up and it fell into 1 million pieces. So overnight, Boys Town lost its brand. So at that point, he decided we need to have a new brand, a new concept for the village of Boys Town, and that's when he discovered the Two Brothers image in a magazine, and that reminded him of a photograph taken of 2 of our boys in 1918, and said, I would like that to be the brand for the village of Boys Town. And in 1943, he adopted the Two Brothers and He Ain't Heavy as our brand.
That is pretty cool. And the stories you're telling us, just absolutely, I bet you love your job.
Boys Town's a very special place to work, especially seeing how it changes the lives of children and families. So every day it's something new.
Well, and you kind of, for lack of a better term, grown up with Boys Town, Tom. You've been there how long?
I've been with Boys Town 30 years.
And how were you introduced to the organization?
I was actually an intern. I was going through the UNO history program, and there was an internship at a museum that was just being created there, and I took the internship. And when it was completed, they said, well, since you're here and you know what you're doing, why don't you just stay? So I've been with Boys Town in different capacities now for 30 years.
Kind of nice to have a historian with that kind of history,
it is,
right?
It is.
So firsthand, then, you can talk best with us about the changes. It's a loaded question, and I just want you to kind of take it and share with us what you think in terms of your perspective. But many changes through the years. For our viewers' purposes, what do you believe are the most important to note, and why?
Probably the most important change in our recent history was in 1975, when our director, Father Hupp, brought the Family Home Program. That was a very revolutionary concept. It said, shut down the dormitories, communal dining halls, move the children into family living units. And that's what Father Flanagan did, Father Hupp did in 1975. And then in 1979, girls became part of our program. So for over 30 years now, they're part of our program in the history of Boys Town.
And in fact, you had a name change. In fact, you've had a few, right? So share with us a little bit when that name change reflected the girls coming on board with you, and what happened that we didn't see it anymore. And some people may not even be aware that there was a change, Tom.
Around 2000, it was decided, since girls were part of our program, we should update our name and change it to Girls in Boys Town. So that was done for about 5 to 7 years, but we kind of lost our identity at that point. People were confusing us with other programs, and so we decided we'd go back to Boys Town, our traditional name. But all our programs today treat children and families, and young ladies are a very important part of our family.
Yeah, the awareness is critical.
Yes, it is.
Right, and so you want to make sure you're raising that in the most effective way. And so, Matthew, so here we are, 30 years after girls have been introduced, and there's a decision made that maybe we're going to make some changes to reflect that. How did you learn of the news of this sculpture?
Kathy, Tom and Eli Hernandez contacted me from Boys Town, and they said they had an opportunity, and they were looking to hire a sculptor to create the new image of Boys Town. And we shared I shared my portfolio with them, and we discussed the mission of Boys Town, and Tom took me on a tour of the Hall of History, which was fascinating. And then we started with the sculpture.
So Matthew, you mentioned portfolio. I think we would be remiss if we didn't ask you a little bit about some of the things that you have done around the area and the state. Let our viewers know a little bit more about your background.
Sure. I have created many pieces in Omaha, and I've been very fortunate to have such wonderful support here in Omaha. And some of the pieces that I've done are the Children's Hospital piece, and that is entitled Imagine. And that's a 90-foot tall piece. That's about one of the largest pieces that I've done to date. And then I created the piece outside of the CenturyLink Center with a 35-foot clock, and then the characters, the troupe outside there, the performing troupe. And then most recently, besides Boys Town, I'm creating a large piece for the zoo, and it's called Alaskan Adventure, and that piece will have 80 different sculptures inside it.
So Matthew, not only do you have to be an immense talent to be able to do something like that, but that's a little bit of pressure when a Tom Lynch comes to you from Boys Town and says, hey, we're going to change things up a little bit and we're going to use this as our front door, and gosh, Matthew, we'd like you to do it. Tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to sculpting and why you continued it before we talk a little bit more about this piece at Boys Town.
Okay. Well, I've been a sculptor my whole life. So I started sculpting when I was 14 years old. And I created a duck decoy. I had always drawn and painted pieces, and I grew up in Grand Island, so the Platte River was a big influence. So I decided I wanted to sculpt something, and I created a decoy of a duck and sold it to my mom's, or our neighbor, for $20. Well, there's a career right there. So I started really getting involved in all different types of sculpture, and then focused on bronze and then large scale monumental sculpture in the last 15 to 20 years.
So how does this work, Matthew? So Tom comes to you and says, here's kind of the vision. Now you go home or you go to your workshop, wherever it is that you go. How do you start this whole process? Because it's just Tom coming to you verbally, and then before you know it, we've got this beautiful work of art. So walk us through a day in your life with all of that.
Well, first of all, I was extremely honored to have been chosen by Boys Town. I mean, it's just such a loving, caring organization, and to be a part of their history is truly an honor. But when I start a sculpture, after discussing with Tom what they would like to see and what the connection between the two children, it's all about that connection between those two children and the sculpture. So we brought in actual models from Boys Town and had them pose in the pose we liked, and we tweaked them and changed clothes, and just had them pose exactly how I wanted to portray it. And I shot hundreds of photographs and then created a small maquette for them to see, kind of a sketch, and then we can change that or do whatever, make any modifications we need to that. And then we went to a larger size before we actually went to the 7-foot sculpture.
Oh my goodness, Tom, how'd you pick the kids? I mean, how did all that work? And I want to know how they did after that session was over. They were probably about ready to, they were probably pretty spent, but how did you pick the kids?
We had our mayor come down, and he posed as a young man, and then we had a young lady come down that was part of our community, and she represents all the different girls that have been at Boys Town over the years.
That is pretty cool. So you have this session with them. They're probably expecting one thing, and then not realizing how much was going to be
it's
involved
a lot of work.
With that, Matthew.
Yes.
So talk to us about kind of that time frame, how they did over that whole time frame, and by the end, did they have much feedback for you in terms of how it all went?
Well, so they posed for the original session, and then so that's what I used to get all the clothing and the fabric and how things relate to one another. And then I actually take and sculpt that in clay. So we start with a foam armature and sculpt all the foam, and then that holds the clay on the piece, so it actually has a structure to hold it. And then do the fine details in there, and then the piece will be cast in Colorado.
And do you ever get to a point where you're like halfway through this thing? How many hours, for example, does something like that take?
Something like
Matthew?
this may take a couple hundred, maybe 300 hours.
So you're usually given a pretty decent time frame, I would imagine, and you go to work to
Yes.
meet that deadline. Oh my gosh. And one at a time? Is that how you do it, or do you have multiple projects going on?
I have multiple projects, and that allows me to create something, sculpt on one piece and then put it aside for a while so you can come back with fresh eyes and make any corrections that I would need to make. Or you might just see something that you want to change, maybe the way the hair is or the look. You just never know.
Any projects that are more or less appealing to you? Would there be anything that you might say, no, that's not really for me? Artists are kind of that way too. Sometimes there are certain things they really enjoy drawing. Anything you wouldn't want to sculpt?
Well, I don't know if there's necessarily anything that I wouldn't want to, but I love to work on pieces that people relate to and that people have a connection with. So when they see a piece of mine, I want them to have a personal connection, and they can draw something from that piece and take something with them.
Okay, well, let's look at the outcome of this discussion. We have a couple of photographs, so we want to put those up for our viewers. And Matthew, just think out loud here.
Okay, so this, we had some young people from Boys Town, and they're in their art department, and so they actually got a sneak peek at the project last week. And this is the 7-foot clay version of this sculpture. And what I will do is we'll take this and then have a mold made of it, and then start the bronze casting process. And this piece will be cast in cut up and cast in probably 50 or 60 different sections. And then it'll all be welded and all finely honed and smooth to then the bronze state. And then it'll be, then we'll do a patina on it, which is the coloration.
Okay, and here we have one. You're very happy, very pleased with what's going on here.
So here you can see the scale. I'm happy. They were asking terrific questions.
Good.
They had great questions for me. So, and their response was terrific. So I was very pleased with that.
What has the overall reaction? I mean, I might be stating the obvious here, but have you received any feedback other than "Wow, that's beautiful," Matthew? Or tell us a few of the comments.
Well, I don't know if a lot of people have actually seen it yet. It's been under wraps for about 1.5 to 2 years. So it's just we're kind of having a little unveiling a little bit of it at a time, but it has been very positive.
Tom, when will this officially then be on display at Boys Town?
It'll be unveiled this coming spring in the village of Boys Town. And we encourage the public to come out and see the new sculpture. It's beautiful. Those of us at Boys Town are very lucky that we're working with Matthew on this, because it's a very special project. We only do this every 100 years, so it's a very special event.
Very, very cool. Well, congratulations to you,
Thank
Matthew.
you.
It is absolutely beautiful. I want to change gears a little bit. New sculpture. Let's talk coins, Tom. Commemorative coins. We have a few photos we'll put up in a minute, but tell us the story behind the coins first.
The U.S. Mint every year issues special commemorative coins for charities. And for our centennial, we asked if we could have some coins made for Boys Town, and it was a great effort. We had to go through the U.S. Congress, get bills passed. Eventually, President Obama had to sign the legislation to have the coins created. And we had artists come from the U.S. Mint come to Boys Town. They reviewed our archives, visited the museum, just like Matthew did, and they went back and they created a series of designs. And the Secretary of Treasury this summer will pick the designs he'll have for the coins. And there'll be 3 coins. There'll be a solid gold, a solid silver, and a clad coin. And they'll be released again next spring, that we hope to have those out, and they'll be available for the public to purchase through the U.S. Mint.
Wow, and when you say series, we don't take that lightly. How many were created?
There were over 40 different designs submitted by the various artists. And Boys Town really has no say in the final design. They all have to be original artwork, and then it's selected by the Secretary of the Treasury.
Wow, so we're looking at a few examples right now. This is the second in our 3 here. So anything that you'd like to comment on there?
We have our current brand, the Brother Sister. That was very important that be presented on the coins. And then they also wanted to have Father Flanagan on the coins. So that's why we have various portraits of Father Flanagan. And this again is all original art created by the artists. In the one coin we have Father Flanagan with our first group of boys in our first home down on 25th and Dodge Street from 1917. That reflects that early history. And then we have going forward with our brother-sister representation.
Did you have a favorite? I'm going to imagine you've seen them all. You've probably reflected and pondered some more. Do you have, and would you share it with us if you did?
There's one I really liked of a current image of a group of children in front of one of our homes, which I felt reflected our programs today. And then there was a beautiful portrait of Father Flanagan too that we liked. All the coins were submitted to Boys Town for review. We could just make comments, but ultimately the decisions are made in Washington, D.C.
Matthew, what is, as the sculptor now and someone who is involved, what is one thing that you learned? We hear Boys Town a lot, right? We pass it, those of us who live in the area. What is one thing you learned about Boys Town that you didn't know going into this whole project?
Well, when Tom talks about, boys walking miles and miles to get to Boys Town, and when they would see that the Boys Town image, the sign, I mean, that really strikes a chord. I think that just shows what they've done and the outreach that they've had to not only our community, but to boys and girls all over the nation.
Wow, Tom, lots of outreach coming up. You've had a lot, you're doing a lot, you will do a lot. We have about a minute. What else can we expect from the Centennial coming up?
We will have a new publication coming out on our history. We'll have events taking place throughout the year in the village of Boys Town. Some will be open to the public, and we encourage the public to come out and get connected with Boys Town and learn about our mission and how they can help Boys Town also.
Yeah, and if folks are thinking, wow, what a great opportunity for me to be introduced to this great organization, volunteers tend to surface at times like this, and they really want to help. They really want to make a difference, and not just from the area. You may have people coming from the state, right? What's the protocol for that? Do they call a certain number, or what would you encourage them to do?
Volunteer opportunities, we do have those in the village of Boys Town. People contact myself, I'm the volunteer coordinator, and we have volunteers and we have mentors that work with our boys and girls in our school. So they contact myself at Boys Town. They can call our general Boys Town number, and then they'll be referred to me, and then I'll work with them and have them sign up to be a volunteer or mentor.
Wow, and we have that number. We're going to go ahead and put that up on the screen for our viewers now. So historian and volunteer coordinator. I thought you had enough going for historian. The volunteer coordination thing is a little overwhelming just to think about here. For more information, folks can log on to boystown.org. That number 402-498-1300. And then the Boys Town National Hotline is 800-448-3000. Matthew, Tom, thank you so much for being here today and walking us through the past 100 years. We're really looking forward to the Centennial. Best wishes with all the planning.
Thank you.
And congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you.
You bet. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information can be found at unotv.unomaha.edu. If you'd like to share your comments about this show, call UNO TV at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or email us at considerthis@tvmail.unomaha.edu.